Joining us live, the former Trump campaign advisor, my friend Roger Stone, the star, if you will, of that made-for-CNN video that happened to be outside when the FBI raided your home. How do you feel tonight, my friend?
I feel completely and totally exonerated. I feel entirely vindicated. You know, I was arrested at 6:06 in the morning. At 6:11, one of the talking heads from CNN sent my lawyer on by text a copy of my sealed indictment. It wouldn't be unsealed by a federal magistrate for 4 more hours. And if it had no court markings or any timestamp on it, but if you looked at the metadata tags, you could see that it had the initials of the man who wrote it, therefore the man who leaked it, Andrew Weissman, the de facto head of the Mueller witch hunt. The leaking of a search or arrest warrant prior to being executed is a felony, but of course the judge in my case could care less. CNN won an award from the prestigious White House Correspondents Association for their investigative reporting when in fact they were at the doorstep when I was arrested on the basis of a leak.
Unbelievable. CNN, by the way, the same CNN brought on another Andrew McCabe today, one of the dirty cops who ran the FBI that was targeting you. McCabe is alleged to have lied under oath, leaked sensitive information to the media, led the Russia hoax that we're talking about, lied to the FISA court, by the way, to surveil the Trump campaign. And that guy, Roger, was on CNN today saying Kash Patel was, quote, degrading the FBI's image. How do you respond to that one?
By the way, the prosecutor in my case was the same prosecutor who decided not to prosecute Andrew McCabe for his various crimes. Look, I don't get my news from CNN for the same reason I don't eat out of the toilet. Nothing these folks say is true or accurate. They're not really journalists. But I can tell you this, there's a big difference between the FBI under Christopher Wray or James Comey. Under Kash Patel, this raid would not have gone down if there was not some probable cause, if there was not some legal rationale for it. I believe it is the reopening of an investigation that was closed by the Biden administration into John Bolton's possession of classified documents. Instead, they wanted to prosecute the one man in the world who was entitled to have classified documents. That would be Donald Trump under the Presidential Documents Act. He was entitled to have or declassify any document he wished, unlike John Bolton, which is, I think, was the purpose of this raid today, Ed.
Absolutely. Okay, so Donald Trump Jr. and others were on X this morning, finding it very curious that within minutes of the raid, it wasn't just CNN there this time, it was the radical anti-Trump lawyer George Conway. He was out on the driveway of Bolton's home, attacking the president, saying he's got mental issues. And here's one of the things he said. Let's watch it. I'll get your reaction.
What I've heard, John Bolton was always fastidious with classified versus unclassified. It's all about the fact that he wrote a book that was uncomplimentary about the president's mental capacity and other abilities. If that's what this is about, well, I think we should all start buying John's book and reading the passages about Donald Trump.
Interesting that he seemed to have like these talking points, legal talking points. I've heard, from what I've heard, he's always very fastidious with classified info. What's going on here? Is he lawyering up? What's up?
That's what it looks like to me. First of all, let's point out George Conway lives in New York, whereas John Bolton's home is in the suburban Washington area. So what this tells me is that Bolton has lawyered up as he needs to. Conway is, of course, the architect of the extension of the New York state law that allowed the lawsuit by E. Jean Carroll, in which she falsely accused President Donald Trump of sexual assault. Little did Conway know when that law was extended that New York City's Democrat Mayor Eric Adams and Democrat Governor Andrew Cuomo would get caught in that snare, both of them now sued for sexual assault in civil actions based on Conway's actions.
There you go. And I do know that Conway at one point had a residence in Maryland, so maybe he goes back and forth between New Jersey and Maryland. But either way, the talking points were curious. Let's shift gears to something else, which is the Epstein Files, which you wrote a whole book about it. People can get it online years ago. And the left thought they were going to burn President Trump. They spent the last few weeks talking about it. But today, the administration, as you know, released all kinds of Epstein documents. And the Justice Department released the audio and transcript between the top justice official Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell. And the biggest takeaway is something you've been predicting all along. Maxwell telling the number 2 at Justice, Todd Blanche, Blanche asked if the president ever got a massage at Mar-a-Lago or anywhere. She responded no. She also confirmed she never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. Doesn't this prove, in your eyes, that this was another Democrat hoax, that Trump is scared about the Epstein Files?
Yeah, it's an absurdity. Look, we had all this information in 2015. I had Epstein's phone book. Not everyone in the phone book is guilty of inappropriate or illegal behavior, but his butler did circle the names of those he said were involved in pedophilia or were witnesses. We also had all of the FAA logs. And what it shows, Ed, is, as well as the sworn testimony of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, is there was a former president who visited Epstein's Island. That would be Bill Clinton, who is on the FAA logs as having been on Epstein's Lolita Express airplane at least 26 times, and based on my research, was on the island for parties at least 4 times. So I agree with the Democrats who say we need full disclosure. Donald Trump has nothing to fear from full disclosure. There is no inappropriate activity by Donald Trump, but it will snare some big-name Democrats. Former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell visited the island. Former Governor Bill Richardson of New Mexico visited the island. Many, many others. No Republicans that I'm aware of.
And the President of the United States today mentioned Larry Summers, who was a former Democrat Treasury Secretary and White House advisor, who later became, as you know, president of Harvard University. You know, innocent until proven guilty. I'm not making it. This is what the President of the United States brought up today. So you think the Democrats are going to face more heat here? I guess to tie it back to Bolton, there's been frustration, as you know, in the MAGA movement, where you're a very prominent figure, that in general, they feel like there hasn't been accountability for these Democrats out there who, whether it's Epstein, whether it's Russiagate or whatever. I get that Bolton's a Republican, but do you think this raid of Bolton today, the careful, methodical investigation here, does it suggest that the Trump administration will hold Republicans and Democrats who are engaged in wrongdoing, that they will hold them accountable, that we are going to see criminal convictions?
I absolutely think so. First of all, it has been confirmed to me by solid sources that based on the declassified documents released by Tulsi Gabbard, I think in a very meticulous and methodical way, we now have complete and total documentation of the seditious conspiracy to engage in treason and undo the results of the 2016 election. And therefore, I think those involved in that conspiracy specifically, Vice President Joe Biden, Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor, Dr. General James Clapper, then the Office of Director of National Intelligence, the FBI Director James Comey, the CIA Director John Brennan. I think that entire criminal cabal will face charges. But the good news, Ed, is since this was a continuing conspiracy that didn't end in 2016 or 2017, takes you all the way to the raid at Mar-a-Lago. This trial is likely to take place in South Florida, where a fair trial can actually be held, but where the guilty, I think, will be convicted.
Very interesting. We're going to be following it very closely. Roger Stone, a man who was already totally vindicated in my mind before today, but as he said at the top, today was a big day for him and a big day for America. Roger Stone, thanks for coming on.